mentioned is here. It's Hades, Myth, Magic, and Modern Devotion. I'm doing a talk about this tomorrow. I also have a piece in the latest 2026 Llewellyn's Magical Almanac. I also write for a lot of publications like Witchology Magazine and the Feminine Macabre and the Rebus Tarot Journal. I've been practicing witchcraft for over 25 years at this point, so I've been around a bit. I write and teach from my home studio, which is located in Auburn, Alabama, and that is the land of the Muskogee people, otherwise known as the Creek people. They're the people of one fire. And I just want to acknowledge their sovereignty on those lands. And I believe right now we're on the lands of also Creek, but Cherokee as well.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So I just want to acknowledge that before we begin. So what we're going to do today, there are not very many of us, so I feel like if we want to popcorn questions or comments, like that's probably fine. This is a pretty small group. We're going to talk about the technique of circle casting. So we're going to do kind of an overview of the role of elements, directions, wards, tools, other things. And if we have time and we're so inclined, we can do a casting together. And who in here is already like a magical practitioner or a witchcraft practitioner? Okay, so we have a couple. And we have a sort of, okay. Yeah. Working on this. So I don't belong to any specific magical tradition or initiatory sort of group. I am an eclectic witch, which means I kind of pull and draw from my own experience and a lot of different sources. So, take what makes sense to you of what I will present, but, leave what doesn't, because there are many, many ways to do this. All right, so let's begin. So for our purposes, we're going to talk about the timinos. The timinos actually is a Greek term, and it refers to a grove, a cave, a grotto, or a parcel of land that was set aside and dedicated to a god. And the reason we're going all the way back is because what happened inside the confines, and you can see here kind of this temple complex, what would happen inside the confines of the timinos, which was often demarcated with stones or a fence. You can kind of see the fence that once was around this one. It's a sanctuary, basically. Anyone who was in the confines of the timinos were under the protection of its tutelary god, and they couldn't be moved or anything done to them against their will. So this is a very protective space, and it's a very liminal space. And this particular, this is the Temple of Athena Nike, and it was built between 426, 421 before Common Era, and it's near the Acropolis. So that's what you're looking at right now. Just one example of one of these ancient Greek timinos. So why is this important? Carl Jung. So Carl Jung, who, if you're not familiar with Jung, is a psychologist, one of the founders of modern psychology, and he really took this concept of the timinos, a protective and liminal space, and compared it as a metaphor for the magical circle, right? Or even for the mandala, like anything that had sort of a protective enclosure inside was where you could do magical work, imagination work, you could process things and be safe in there. This says metaphor for the magic circle. So Carl Jung is who kind of put these ideas together. So when we talk about circle casting, we're creating a liminal space, right? We're trying to create something that is between the worlds, because that's where we really practice magic. And rituals and actions that we may do inside the magic circle are not bound by the consensus reality or our 4D experience, right? So, these are all the steps. We're going to go through them one by one as we go along here. And most importantly, the first thing that you want to do, even before you get into this operation, is to pick a space, right? So pick a space that allows for clear focus. You should feel safe and comfortable in the space. It could be indoors, it could be outdoors, but it's best to limit your distractions if you can. And you'd want to set up your central altar with any sort of supplies you might need, anything else that you're going to be doing inside the circle. Make sure you've got all that inside before you even start casting. And this is a very basic modern day casting, which I like to divide into 9 parts, which is 3 times 3, which is magic, magical numerology. And so let's break this down. Step one is purification. Purification is really important to a lot of magical operations and techniques, and also for our magic circle. So purification is to purify a space or a person or an object, and the idea is that you will clean and neutralize any lingering energies that are, stuck on this thing or stuck in the space. So during your setup time, it's a good idea to purify the location you choose, maybe purify any altar setup or tools that you might be bringing in. And when it's time for you to begin the casting, you'll want to purify yourself and any other persons that might be coming into the space, right? So there are 3 methods that are really used a lot in magical circles, and they're very accessible, all of these techniques for purification. So the first one, this one right here, we're looking at fumigation or smoke cleansing. You know that I didn't call it smudging. That's actually a misappropriation of a term that refers to a very specific indigenous ceremony. And what we're talking about is fumigation. So basically we're lighting incense or herbs, and we're letting that smoke kind of purify whatever's going on in ourselves, which people have done around the world for centuries, millennia probably. So lustration. So lustration is when water is used to purify, right? So basically this is the sacred sprinkle, right? And you can use blessed water, especially prepared water, things like that. Work in some herbal correspondences, that's a whole nother panel. But lustration is also a commonly used form of purification. And then also there's sound, and I have these wind chimes here. A lot of people like to use singing bowls, crystal bowls, chimes, fairy bells, things like that. They work really well. They sort of loosen up the vibration and kind of let anything that might be stuck there clear out. So the second step is consecration. Oh, and if you, I should have told you this at the very beginning. If you're furiously trying to scribble down everything I'm saying, please don't worry about it. I will give you a QR code at the end of the presentation. It goes to my link tree, and there's a direct link to my presentation notes as well as all the slides. So, yay. You'll have all of that. So, yeah, because it's really hard to kind of remember everything and to write down super fast. So, consecration. Consecration is dedicating a space, an object, or an activity to a specific purpose. And so a lot of magical practitioners do consecration by reading a statement of intent, right? So I purify the space, next I'm going to consecrate it. And just, there's so many ways to craft the intention. It's really based on what you're doing in the circle once you cast it. But I have some examples from recent circles that I have cast. I think all of these are with groups, but you can certainly do this as a solo practitioner. So for example, we did a ritual where we were seeking out the wisdom of the Lady of the Lake. And our intention to consecrate that circle went like this. We petition the Lady of the Lake, she who keeps the sword of sovereignty, to heal us, bolster our confidence, and offer us the nurturing we need to step into our power. We claim our sovereignty for ourselves and open up to her inspiration. So you can see that's a very clear declaration of exactly what we're going to do. This is a really simple one. This was when we were doing kind of a sound healing session for each other. And it was a very simple intention. We come together to heal ourselves and each other with sound. Simply stated, right? Another ritual we did recently was to work with rune magic and sigil magic. If you're not familiar with the term rune, it's basically it's a magical and writing method that's based in Old Norse mythology that's been handed down to us. So for our rune ritual, we did an intention of a gift begets a gift again. We come as seekers to the Well of Weird, asking the rune whites to show us the most potent direction for our personal magic. And that intention is combining several bits of Norse mythology. So a gift begets a gift again is from Norse text. The Well of Weird, of course, is from Norse mythology, so just kind of combining that in, right? And then there's like a really simple one again. If you're doing it solo, and say you're just doing a trance journey, right? And you want to set a boundary that protects you. You can simply say, I cast this circle as a protective container while I journey to the other world. And there you are. So, and again, remember that team notes. You're creating that liminal space and also a protective space. So step 3, the cast and call. Surprise! There are actually 3 distinct operations within step 3. Casting the circle, calling the quarters, and setting the wards. So what you want to do, you can cast the circle with many different things. First of all, you can cast it with your fingers, right? You don't actually need a tool. You can use just your index finger, which a lot of people do. I like to use my index and middle finger. And the reason I like to do that is the index finger is aligned with the planetary energy of Jupiter. The middle finger is aligned with Saturn. So Jupiter is all about expansion and wisdom, right? And Saturn is all about boundaries, rules, and restrictions. So what I'm saying is this is where I want to gain wisdom and expand my work, and also this is a boundary. None shall pass, right? So I usually do 2 fingers. I also brought my friend here. This is an English blackthorn wand. I use it a lot. And basically a good wand should be about the distance from your elbow to your hand. That's a really good length to have if you're picking out a wand for yourself. And of course, you probably want to use a wood or material that corresponds to the type of magic you do and the things that you really resonate with. You might imagine, since I do a lot of work with the underworld and working with the dead, ghosts and spirits, I need something a little heftier to help me with that. People cast circles with many different things: fingers, wands, magical knives called athames. People also cast them with an antler horn or a feather, lots of different things. I've even been in a ritual where someone cast the circle with a kazoo, which was really funny and great and totally worked. Just this past weekend, I was in a group ritual where the person casting the circle really likes to work with rocks and stones and likes to stack them. And he cast the circle by walking around clacking the stones together, like all around the boundary, and that was really cool too. So you can get really creative with that. So I want to talk a little bit here about the different ways you can cast the circle. So basically there are 2 ways to do this. So Gisel is sunwise or clockwise, and in Scots Gaelic, which is kind of where it comes from German, but also from Scots Gaelic, a D and an E make a J sound. That's why it's Gisel, right? Sometimes it's also spelled with an O right here and pronounced Josel. So you might hear both of those. Or you can just say clockwise, and that is fine, because that's what I use most of the time, especially when I'm doing ritual for a large group and I'm not really sure who's familiar with what terms, right? Because you want to make your magic accessible. The point is not to confuse. So Widdershins is counterclockwise. And again, this is also a word that comes to us from German and is heavily used in Scots Gaelic. So there's some debate about this. And the hot debate, the hot tea, is that many folks believe that it's only appropriate to go clockwise, and that it's very, very bad luck and counterproductive to go counterclockwise. I say, basically, I tend to cast circles clockwise most of the time, and the reason I do that is because I'm either raising energy up that I'm sending out, I am trying to gain wisdom for something I want to go out in the world and do, I'm casting a spell out. I mean, what's common about all these things, right? I'm sending them out into the world. If I'm doing different type of magical work, such as shadow work, or if I'm doing dark moon scrying in my scrying bowl, I cast it Widdershins. Because what I want to do is I want to circle within. I want to go within, deep, down. I want to, be in a receptive. I'm not sending things out. I'm trying to kind of delve within, right? But again, choose your own adventure. That's what I do. I basically, my magical systems operate on correspondences, even down to the level of which way I cast my circle. So I'm casting it either sunwise or counterclockwise based on its corresponding effect on the magic that I'm going to work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So, we talked about popular tools, your fingers, wands, feathers, antlers, bones, kazoos. Human crafted materials. We talked about athames, also swords. I've seen swords, I've seen spears, I've seen batons, like the twirling kind. Hi. Do you need something?
Nope.
Okay.
Just doing my job.
Okay, great.
I'm not here.
Okay, so we talked about this. Let's go to calling the quarters. So we're still in step 2, right? We're still casting the circle. So we've actually either stood in the center and we've used our tool to cast a circle all the way around in whichever direction we choose. Or if it's, a lot of times, if it's a big group ritual, you'll see the person actually walk the boundary all the way around as they're casting it. The next thing in this particular step is to call the quarters. So a lot of magical practitioners like to do this thing called calling the quarters that reaches out to the elements or the spirits of the directions or other corresponding unseen beings that might inhabit the different directions. And basically what you're doing with this is petitioning the beings or the forces that you name to lend their energy to enhance or help power your ritual or your magical working. So that's when you're calling them in. So if you're not familiar with the elements and how they operate in magic, I've listed them here from lightest to most dense. And so you've got air. Air is in the direction of east, which is where I always start my circle because I start with less dense to most dense, right? So air in the east is associated with dawn, with springtime, the suit of swords and the tarot, with inspiration, change, travel, innovation, communication, and ideas. We move on to fire. Fire is associated with the direction of south. It is noon, it is high summer, it's the suit of wands in the tarot, it's transformation and passion, creativity, all of that really juicy stuff in life. And moving on, we get a little more dense and we're at water. Water is associated with the west, with sunset, with autumn time, with the suit of cups and the tarot, with emotions, relationships, dreams, intuition, memories, things like that. And then we have earth here. So earth is associated with north. It's midnight, it's wintertime, it's the suit of pentacles in the tarot. It has to do with stability, foundation, structure, also having all the creature comforts that you need to survive. All that is earth. And then finally, once we've done this, starting in the east to the south, to the west, and to the north, we'll come around to center. And center is really the home. The direction of center is very ephemeral. It's aether or spirit. It's what that etheric thing that connects us all, right? And it's associated with all time, or no time at all, because time is actually a construct, right? It's a source of spiritual connection, infinity, the inspiration that comes in. All of those things are associated with center, or with the element of spirit, the fifth element. So if you can also use this, calling in these different quarters, to enhance the correspondence and the resonance of your magic if you're trying to work with a specific type of energy. For example, I actually have this in my book. For magic involving the Greek gods, you might want to call upon the anemoi of each direction. Those are the winds of each direction. Because the ancient Greeks, of course, were a very seafaring people, and the winds were super important to them. And if I'm trying to call Greek gods into my circle, they might actually respond better and be more attracted to something that a concept they're familiar with, right? You can also, in that construct, if you're using the four winds, you can also use something like the omphalos for center, right? The omphalos is like the cosmic egg. It's basically the stone that Rhea fed to Kronos instead of Zeus. And it was basically the center of the Oracle of Delphi is where the omphalos. They actually still have it. You can go to the museum and see it. So just kind of an example. When we did the ritual for the rune whites, we actually, in Norse mythology, there are dwarves of each direction, so we call the dwarves, right? So you can really kind of make it fun, and you don't always have to just do air east, fire south, water west, etc. So that was 3B. 3C, setting the wards. So I'm a safety witch, and I am always going to tell you to do the thing that will make your magic more safe. People always ask me, is magical safe? Is this or that operation safe? And, I always tell people, I don't think that anything you can do with magic is inherently dangerous, but neither is it ever completely safe, and so it's good to do as many things as you can to protect yourself. So, wards. Wards are basically guardians or stop signs. That's what I think about as a lot as stop signs. So you want to place a sign of warding and protection in each of the 4 cardinal directions, the ones that you just did to call the quarters: east, south, west, and north, and in the center. So again, you can draw this with your fingers, you can draw it with the magical tool that you're using to cast the circle. You just want to, when you're doing it, empower it with that intention of protection, right? And these are a couple common examples. First, we have the equal armed cross, either as you see it here, like a plus sign, or it can look like an X. That's also used a lot. It's very similar to the Christian cross, but the lines are equal in length, right? And they intersect directly at the midpoint. So this is a really ancient symbol. And like I said, it's used sometimes upright, some on its side. And, interpretations vary as to what this could actually mean, but it could be the 4 seasons, the 4 directions, the 4 winds, the 4 elements. We don't know. It wasn't, that part of the knowledge wasn't handed down to us, but the symbol was. So in the middle we have the pentagram. When you see this 5-pointed star with a circle around it, that is a pentagram. Just the star that is a pentacle. Just the star by itself is the pentagram. So we're looking at the pentacle right there. The 5-pointed star, it's symbolized well-being and protection for at least 7,000 years. We can find it on artifacts and surviving literature from ancient Sumer, ancient China, across Europe and the Mediterranean. And like I said, when you draw a circle around the 5-pointed star, you get the pentacle, which you might see in modern paganism. You might see people wearing this symbol around their neck or other types of things. Modern pagans tend to use this to affirm life, connections, spirit. I mean, it means all those things to me too. I actually probably use this more often than anything, but for me, I'm a philosophy nerd. I have a background in philosophy, and the Pythagoras mystery cult, the Pythagoreans would use this as a symbol to recognize each other, right? And so for me, I'm like, oh, that's kind of what I like it. Not only is it protective, but I'm also kind of, again, drawing in something that was from ancient Greece, from a mystery cult, and drawing in that correspondence as well. And then finally, last but not least, we have Ehwaz over there on the end. This is the rune from, Elhaz, the rune from Norse mythology that represents a protective shield. And so this is used a lot to protect. I also have a very good friend who, let's see if I can do it right, who actually does this with their hand to represent it, and does this to set the wards, which I think is kind of cool, right? Yeah. And what we're talking about right now, I'm just giving you magical tech, right? Like I said, I'm not coming from a specific tradition or belief system. I'm using examples from my own life, but really when you cast a circle and you set these wards, you can use any symbol that's meaningful to you. If you're a Christian, use a cross. It's really what's going to be meaningful to you, your faith systems, your beliefs, your family lineages, things like that, right? Because this is just a tech. It's a technology. You can use it, you can apply it any way you want, really. Any questions so far? Okay.
Using the trident symbol, I had a flash from a past life some years back. I think it was in Sonata.